Uncuckables.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Uncuckables for another week at the regular time of 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time. Well, we're about 5 minutes late. I'm Tim Wilms, editor-in-chief of the Unshackled, here in the studio in Melbourne, and we've got with us via his new place, James Fox Higgins of the Rational Rise. Where the bloody hell have you been?
I've been out in the bush, mate, and hopefully my signal and my phone reception lasts for. I have been putting together my new studio in my old studio, and yeah, looking forward to kicking off the JFH show very soon once we lay cables, so I get the good internet and not the crap internet that I'm running off now.
Yeah, you're already going in and out, so I'm glad that you pre-warned our audience. We are streaming to both the Uncuggables YouTube channel and also to DLive, and I've just put in the YouTube live chat the Entropy link, where you can come and join us there, ask the pair of us a question, and also you can send through a super chat to support the production of this show. Now, you did inform us at the end of last year that you were moving or back to where you came from. Pardon the pun. You're in your old. It was the Rational Right studio.
Back in the day, this was the place where it started. Although back then it was much more of a music studio, and now it's my library because I've accumulated some books in the last year or so.
So I wonder if somebody's watching who'll zoom in and see if there's anything controversial in the books
there
behind
certainly
it.
is. Yeah, there's a few there that people might pick up on as being future contraband.
Now, I mentioned that before you were the Rational Rise, you were the Rational Right, and we both started, I think, about the same time, late 2016, but it was a trio back then with you, your friend Sven, and Rob. And eventually it morphed into just as the title said, the James Fox Higgins show. And we've both come a long way since then. It was just as Trump was being elected president. That's around about when we both started, and we'd both come from. Well, I'd come from the libertarian movement. You'd come from the, as people crudely call it, the Molyneux cult. And then in the early 2010s, Molyneux was a anarcho-libertarian philosopher, and obviously he's quite different now. As a you.
Although he's held true at a lot of his principles, but yeah, he's gotten sort of more woke as the years have rolled on, and I guess so have we. But yeah, it's Molyneux was the start of the red pill experience for me, because before that, and only shortly before that, I just had your very typical, milk toast left-wing views about things because I didn't really think them through or do much reading. But yeah, once that shifted, it was very hard to stop the rise. And yeah, now I would be, as somebody in the comments is saying, I would be properly classed as the rational far right, if anything.
Well, it used to be when we started the alt-right, that was the buzzword at the time. If you supported Trump, you were alt-right, and that term lost. Well, it had a more hardcore definition that it was explicitly white nationalist, and you and I both in those back then. Richard Spencer was he'd actually created the term alt-right, and nobody wanted to be associated with him. And then the term alt-light was created, I think, by Gavin McGuinness. But basically, the far extreme left, as we should call them, they basically did a good job of lumping everyone who was alt-right or alt-light together and called them far-right. And then, of course, in 2019, the new term was coined, extreme far-right.
Yeah, they're just going to have to keep adding, some prefixes there to make it true, but it never will be. They want to slap us with these labels. It was really interesting to me, and we'll get to it a bit later in our discussion tonight about the Richmond rally in Virginia in the USA. But how much the media are just still slamming these like neo-Nazi white supremacist terms when they're talking about just pretty normal Americans who are defending their constitutional rights in a very peaceful way. It's bizarre to me how they want to keep slapping us with these terms, but you know, nobody who's worth their salt gives a damn about what the mainstream media call us anymore. And and in the real world too, it's like, people might have heard whispers that I'm some kind of weird political radical, but once they talk to me and we talk through the ideas, my views are actually pretty sane and pretty normal. And one thing that's really happened across the years that I've been doing, my exploration of truth in public on The Rational Rise has been my journey to becoming a Christian, or rather my journey home to my Christianity, because I was a very devout Christian as a child, but I lost my way for a long time, and I found my way back home. And really what it boils down to in the world for me of politics is that there are those who serve Satan and there are those who serve Christ. And nationalism is the proper godly Christian way for countries to operate, and there's nothing evil or wrong or hateful about it. So
you certainly learn, and a lot of other people are learning, the people who you're told are extremists and full of hate and bile, they're actually the nicest, most loyal people you ever meet. And it's the people who say that they're the compassionate, tolerant ones. If you go against the grain, if you go against their views in the slightest, then they're they go off at you. They're
literally demon possessed. Yeah.
And of course, as we've seen tragically in the past couple of weeks, that those who say they're tolerant, they're the most vicious online bullies and harassers, all in the name of course, love.
Mm. Yep. That's what the devil does. He inverts reality and twists words and turns them into lies. And Christ was very clear about this. Let your yes be yes and your no be no, and anything else is of the devil. And this is what they do. They take words and they redefine them. And we see it constantly. They change and twist the meanings of words, and they make up labels that are patently untrue about us, or at least inaccurate. It's like when people suggest I'm a white supremacist, for instance. To me, it's a pointless term, because it's like, well, supreme in what regard? Because white people are certainly better at some things than others. Other races, on average, we're certainly better. We're certainly the best race in certain areas, but not in all areas.
Or you just have to look at the 100-meter sprint. Look which race wins that race.
Yeah, that's right. Africans are fantastic runners, and I would not want to fight a Zulu, but. Aboriginals actually never invented the wheel on their own as a people. So white people have been successful in certain ways. Europeans, northern people have been successful in certain ways that other races haven't, and each race has their advantages. And actually, every race has adapted to their environment to be the best, to be the top of the food chain, you could say, in their environment. And now in this multi-culti world where we've put everyone in a bag and shaken it up and sent them all over the planet, and we're all in the wrong place, we're no longer part of the culture that we come from. It's very confusing. And so the white supremacist label is just designed to paint you as a devil in the eyes of others, and it has no accuracy whatsoever. So it has to be rejected as a totally false premise to begin with.
I don't know anyone who would call themselves a white supremacist. If you believe that, how does it translate into a political philosophy or a manifesto? That's the thing that I don't get. It's just one of those empty words, to use that phrase.
Yeah, well, you were talking before about me, the fact that over the last couple of months I've been moving house. It's been the most intense move of my life, really. Like I've moved I've made some big interstate moves in the past with the family, but the family's gotten bigger. I've got 3 dogs now, and I accumulated about 200 books where I was previously living, and it was very intense. But this idea of going back to where you belong, going back to where you come from, I can't do that. My people are from Ireland, and Ireland's fucked now. And I don't have citizenship there, so I wasn't given the choice to go where my people come from or where I belong. So I have to make do with where I am, and I actually have a very beautiful home, and I've started my own tribe. I've brought two families together in my marriage, and we all live together as a tribe on this property. We're homesteading, we grow our own food, we've got lots of dogs, we've got lots of space. We've got, uncles and cousins and three grandparents, and we're all living together and working together. So we've started our own nation because I don't trust the government to manage Australia. I don't trust the world, the globalist banking system to manage and maintain the sovereignty of all these different countries. We've got to just do our own thing. So
Uh,
back to basics.
well, I just hope there that your property or was it mini nation that you're making isn't Wacode to use, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. And I guess there's always a threat of that. And I guess I just got to make sure I don't turn it into anything that would attract such attention. Because again, Waco was a bit of a weird um, it was a bit of a weird situation. I'm not saying that it was what happened there was justified in any way whatsoever, but it attracted a kind of attention that I certainly wouldn't, because we're just families. We're just a family
Yeah,
here,
the thing
doing
with
family stuff.
Waco in 1994 was obviously it was wrong of that community to fire on federal agents, but why did the federal agents, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, why did they need to go there and disturb them in the first place? That's what I don't get.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you say it was wrong of them to fire on federal agents, it depends. Like morally, we have a right to defend ourselves, and just because somebody's wearing a badge or a uniform, it doesn't mean that they can intimidate you or come onto your land in that way. But the everyday normal reality for most people is that most cops, if you ever had a problem with them, they tend to be just normal people, and you can talk to them and figure it out. I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm not doing anything, that the world would consider immoral. I've just got the wrong opinions. And most people in the real world, when you get off the computer, most people in the real world that I encounter, can actually tolerate my wrong opinions pretty well. I've got plenty of friends who I disagree with on many things, and we get along just fine.
Well, I'm not sure if you heard, but Dewey DeBoer, who edits the Unshackled New Zealand affiliate Right Minds and who I co-host Trans Tasman Talk with, he's a recreational shooter and has a large firearms collection, and I'm sure you're aware of what Jacinta Ardern has been trying to do over there post Christchurch. He
Yep.
wrote a submission into the new firearms legislation and used an example of his own 22 millimeter rifle to demonstrate. To make a point, and then he was raided under the new laws because they knew he had that gun from his submission, and he's got a wife and three children now, and
It was just a 22 rifle,
yeah.
you mean? Yeah, I mean that's not a dangerous weapon. A bolt action 22 is for shooting rabbits. There's nothing concerning about that kind of weapon.
But I noticed that the Antifa in New Zealand, because there was rightfully a lot of outrage. Why would you raid this family man? But the Antifa there, it's like, oh, he's on this far right show with the Unshackled, and its editor Tim Wilms has interviewed Blair Cottrell at the Lad Society Clubhouse, and the Lad Society is run by Tom Sewell, who tried to recruit Brenton Tarrant before he went to New Zealand. Oh, that's hardly
Mm,
seems like your innocent
yeah.
family man, which goes to your like he's got the wrong opinions,
Yeah.
and it also goes to my point that the left who supposedly hate the police state, they're saying, yeah, get the jackbooted thugs into this person we don't like's house for wrong think.
Did they actually take his weapon?
Or it's he's not commenting further at the moment
Yeah.
because there's a
Well,
lot
that's
of
that's wise.
back and forth.
Yeah, yeah,
But
but it's
yes,
a tricky thing in New Zealand because nobody has registered weapons over there because they haven't asked them to be registered until now, for the most part. Whereas in Australia, it's been, it's been 24 out of my 34 years that this country has had the firearms registry, and I mean, it's not. I don't think there's any reason for concern about the police coming to take our guns if we have the wrong opinions in Australia, because I got my shooting license well after I started Rational Rise, and have been doing this for a long time. And, I'm obviously not on any lists because there was no hitches whatsoever in me going through the process of getting my license and getting my firearms. So, I'm obviously no concern. I'm sure there are some people out there who are, but it's pretty obvious to anyone who ever watches me or knows me that I'm never going to be the guy who goes and shoots up anything. My interest is in gathering food for my family. If we hit an economic crisis or a political crisis in the world where it's harder to go down to the supermarket and buy meat, I want to be able to shoot some rabbits and feed my family, if that's the case. And that's a perfectly legitimate and perfectly legal reason to have a firearm in Australia, and they'll let you have one if you're a normal person like me.
Well, there could be a recession this year. I mean, our Reserve Bank of Australia, they've said they're going to do quantitative easing QE, which is basically print money and devalue our currency in an effort to save the economy. And federal government, to their credit, has been quite restrained in not ceding to the Keynesian economists and media's demands to have a stimulus and blow their pending budget surplus. But you don't know how bad a recession is going to be. It seems inevitable to me. And then, of course, there's property bubbles as well.
Oh, mate,
There's a lot could happen.
I think a total global economic collapse is going to happen at some point in our lifetime, and it's going to be catastrophic for those who aren't prepared. So, don't have money in the bank. Like, that's, your money will be debased before your very eyes overnight if all of your wealth is tied up in money in the bank. So, you just got to be prepared in as many ways as you can.
And don't forget that the federal government, they're making it illegal to engage in a cash transaction over $10,000. Not that you should actually hold a government-backed fiat currency, but it just shows you how they want to basically know exactly where your money is and goes all the time. And of course, centralize all of it at the banks. The licensed big banks.
Yeah. I mean, that's the tendency of empire and of all evil institutions like the people who run the world currently, is that they will incrementally and quite patiently, that it ramps up at some point as people begin to wake up, they'll incrementally grab for more and more power and control over our lives. And again, the less you're dependent on them, the better.
We've got a few regulars I noticed here in the live chat. Australian Protectionist Party. We've also got another account, Australian Meditations. There's Anxious Aussie, and also XYZ Editors, which is David Hiscock. He's away this week. He's going to be another week late. He was a week late the previous week. He's going to be back a week later.
I don't understand.
Well, it's a running joke that Dave's always late, and so I'm just saying that he's running a week late.
Yeah, he's actually doing when he does his next show, it'll actually be in his head the last show. Yeah, got it.
Now, this program is called the Uncuckables, but you and I, during our time running our respective media outlets, we have both cucked majorly earlier on. Now, yours was at the beginning of 2017. We'll go through yours first. You'll be able to explain it better than me because I didn't actually. It was deleted. Your first controversy.
Yeah, well, I think every young man of our generation who was raised by boomer parents, has a bit of cuck in him, because we've been raised that way. So it's our responsibility, if we want the future to be a bright one for our children, to, build upon ourselves and work our way out of that pit and become work the cuck out of ourselves as best we can. But yeah, in that early, it was in the first 6 months of our program. And some of the Uncuckables viewers might remember it if they were Rational Right viewers back at that time. But yeah, we did a show on Australia Day, and we talked to 8 Adrian, what's his name? The Life, Love and Anarchy. Adrian Piccius and True Little Tom were on the show with Sven and Rob and I, and we were discussing, the issues of cultural clash between Aboriginal Australia and white Australia, and between the left and the right around the issue of Australia Day. And, some things were said that were a bit crass, a bit insensitive, but on the whole, what was talked about was true. And the main thing that came up that really offended a lot of people in my real life world, the music world, because I'm a professional musician, and that's where I've come from, and I still am a professional musician, and a lot of lefties in the music world, and there's a lot of multiculturalism in the music world. So a whole bunch of Aboriginal and Islander people and their supporters got really upset at the conversation, mostly because we talked about the fact that the Australian Aboriginal race, the Indigenous people of Australia, have the lowest average IQ of any race on the planet. It's not a controversial fact. It's very, very but of course, that's not accounting for, the mixing of races and the development of these people over time. It's just a fact about the past. Lowest IQ race, didn't achieve much as far as civilization goes, had a culture very, very different to ours, and the Brits came in and just completely wiped them out and overpowered them, and now it's our country. People don't like that conversation. They don't like that fact, and it really upsets them. And to this day, some people still won't work with me because I don't shy away from acknowledging reality. It's not reality about individuals. It's reality about a race of people, which is a very big number. But at the time, the backlash was so intense that my colleague, one of my colleagues in the show, lost his employment. I lost a couple of gigs. It didn't really hurt me too much, but it felt quite alarming to have that economic attack upon us because we had the wrong opinions. So we sort of came back to base, and we thought, what are we going to do here? And we thought maybe going down this whole right-wing path so brazenly is a bad idea. Maybe we need to change the name and rebrand and regroup. And so we changed it to the Rational Rise, which I still actually like and prefer, but I don't shy away from being right-wing anymore. And also I gave it some real thought, and I issued an apology video in which I got a little bit emotional because I was really wanting to acknowledge that I want to be able to have these conversations, but I don't want to also be insensitive. It was a bit of a cuck video. I don't know if I regret it or not. It's just all been part of the learning. Part of the learning is becoming more resilient to people getting upset with you. And I've had exactly the same kind of stuff happen again since, but I've been stronger, and I haven't felt the need to apologize for my views in the same way. And I don't to this day. And now and then, as I said, it rears its head again, and somebody goes, no, I'm not going to work with him because he's a racist asshole. And my attitude today is, fine, I don't want to work with people who don't want to work with me. I got plenty of friends who are on the left, who are on the right, who are of all different races, and we work together just fine because they're reasonable, normal people. But I don't want to work with sensitive SJWs. I don't want to work with snowflakes and assholes. And I definitely don't want to work with people who are so weak that when they get a little bit of pressure from their friends, they turn their back on me. I want mates I can count on. That's how you survive into the future. So it's all water off a duck's back these days, as far as people not liking my opinions goes. I'm used to it now.
Yeah, I have exactly the same approach now. If somebody says, "Oh, I don't want to appear on your show; it's too strange," like, fine, like, fuck you,
okay. Go away.
Yeah, obviously, I can't stand these people. Like some people think you should take the approach, or you should appease and pretty please these people to or accept or embrace you, but that. If you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing nobody, and then you're not yourself. You end up
lying. You end up habitually lying to everyone and yourself, and this is ultimately what they want. Maybe not those individuals who are kind of suckers and caught up in the snowflakery, but the people, the architects of this cuckery in our culture and in the West, they're hell-bent, because they serve Satan, they are hell-bent on getting us to kiss the ring and start spewing the lies that they spew, and start saying there are 5 lights when we know there are 4. Their whole mission is to get us to break down and become so weak that we will lie. And I stand by my apology video that I made, because at no point have I lied. At no point have I, I didn't cuck out in the sense that I came back and said, okay, it's not true that Aboriginals have the lowest IQ rate of any race on the planet. It is true. It's still true. I stand by it. But that is a very broad stroke statement about a race of people. And if you want to get offended as an individual because, you're part Aboriginal and your IQ is higher than that, then, well, maybe your IQ isn't higher than that because an individual is not subject to the same conditions and the same understanding as a generalization about a race is. So, it's people find it really difficult to switch resolutions in conversation. When we're talking about the macro, we talk about it in different terms than when we talk about the micro. And not a lot of people are smart or, I guess, brave enough to do that with honesty.
You mentioned that Aboriginal culture didn't invent the wheel, and I'm not sure if you're following. At the end of last year, the Gold Coast young LNP, put out a schoolies video where they were interviewing schoolies, and the guy who produced it, Barclay McGain, was actually interviewing another young LNP volunteer, Jake Scott, and he said our players should stand for the national anthem. We should celebrate our own culture, not one that couldn't invent the wheel, and that was classified as a young LNP racism scandal. But to their credit, the guy that asked the guy that was interviewing him, Barclay McGain, and the guy that said it, Jake Scott, they didn't cuck at all. They didn't offer a groveling apology. They didn't have a meltdown or anything like that. They are facing disciplinary action from the party, but they haven't,
because the party are cucks.
But there was no groveling apology or anything.
Yeah.
They just sort of, this is just politics, and yeah, I've seen them both still active on.
One thing I've learned, and it's clear that person really understands this, and I hope that remains the case, is that when you try to make a genuine apology, as I did, and as you did, and we'll get into your cuckery story in a minute too. But when you actually go out of your way and you try to you try to appease people by saying, yeah, you're right, it was a really insensitive conversation. We were really rude. We didn't paint the broad strokes with enough clarity for you to understand that we're not talking about you. We're talking about, many, many people in broad strokes. When you go out of your way to make that apology, it actually does nothing to help you. In fact, it makes it worse. And so I'll never apologize again. I will absolutely retract any statement I've ever said that's factually incorrect if somebody can demonstrate to me that it is. Absolutely happy to do that. If you can show me evidence that Aboriginals did invent the wheel, then I'll say, sorry, I was wrong about that. But, that's a metaphorical example of the primitiveness of their culture. And I think it's pretty patently obvious that they were a primitive culture compared to British culture. It's not a moral judgment either. It's just a fact. So I will retract statements when I make a factual error. I won't lie. I won't say things that I know to not be true. And no longer will I apologize for saying things that upset people, because actually the way the world's headed, you better shed some tears now, and you better shed some tears enough to start being honest with the words that you say, or you're going to shed blood in the future. There's a war coming, and at the moment we have the opportunity to talk honestly and try to, make some sense of the situation. But the more that the world succumbs to the lie, the faster we'll degenerate into hell. So I'm not going to be part of that, and I won't be apologizing ever again.
I'll go through my cucking episodes. So for those who don't know, I co-founded the Unshackled with another young person, Sukith Fernando, who is of Sri Lankan ethnicity. He is based in Brisbane. We met online, and so it started just as a basic blog because both of us were just sick of all the Trump derangement SJW syndrome that we're seeing online, and rather than just argue in those political debate groups with morons, well, let's actually make a concrete blog putting our views crystal forward. And during the year 2016 to 2017, we worked pretty well together. His views became more and more alt-right as it was back then. And of course, as I said, I came from a libertarian background, and so well, that was considered too far in that community's view. And this was September 2017. I was in New Zealand at the time covering that nation's general election, where Jacinta Ardern, in the end, she got lucky and got all the other parties to make her prime minister after the election. I was in Wellington that day. I just interviewed Jordan Williams from the New Zealand Taxpayers Union, and then I went to interview the deputy leader of the Opportunities Party, which was a startup party founded by a local New Zealand business magnate. So I was feeling really pleased with myself. Oh, I got to interview these really like big people, and then
Yeah, it's like when the libertarian groups were, getting me to come down to talk at their events and stuff. It's like, whoa, I'm validated. Yeah, I'll be one of these people. And then, you start to grow out of the need for that kind of validation, I think.
And then later in the day, when I was just sort of winding down, because it's pretty intense to travel to two locations across Wellington, a city that you don't know, and then I noticed on one of the Unshackled articles on Facebook, somebody commented, "Oh, it's nice to know the co-founder of this website denies the Holocaust." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And then somebody else posted a link. Sukuth at the time was running for student union at the University of Sydney, and of course, when you run for any elected office, including student politics, there's going to be a dirt file that's dug up on you. And Sukuth, being a 20-year-old at the time, was very sloppy with what he posted publicly online. And they dug up, there was some, I can't remember the exact post, but it was something to do with World War II. And he wrote, "Oh my God."
I remember your article. I don't think I ever saw his post, but I remember your disavowal.
Yes, disavow. It was like a really like it wasn't just a disavow, but it was also trying to claim that I didn't really have a major role, just trying to sort of erase him. So it sort of wasn't acknowledging him. Like, yes, he was part of the Unshackled from the beginning. We'd grown apart. It was because at the time I was getting republished in the Spectator. Like, I'd just been to that Friedman conference, and then was the first Liberty Festival.
Your notoriety and respectability was increasing, and suddenly this bombshell gets dropped.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God.
The threat feels very real, when these things come up, I guess, especially when we're starting out and we haven't built that thick skin yet.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to get republished in the Spectator anymore. I'm not going to get invited to Liberty Fest. I'll be on the fringes forever. And yeah, so I wrote that disavow. I didn't even have the courage to publish it on the Unshackled main website. I just put it on my Facebook wall. That's how I was trying to just sort of like delete like this incident from history.
Yeah,
but obviously I'm telling it now.
That's right. So we're not shying away from the reality anymore, and that's really important. It's because you were drawn into the lie. You were drawn into the temptation to lie to some degree. It's not a massive lie on your part, but that degree, it's that Peter-like denial. Of, I don't know him. I got nothing to do with this. Don't crucify me. But the right thing to do as a friend, and the right thing to do as a man, as I'm sure you well know now, and we've both learnt this lesson the hard way, is to actually just stand by your friends when they're being crucified and just say, you know what, I don't agree with him on that. I think maybe he's crazy for thinking that, but fuck you if you want to hurt him for saying it. Like, he's my mate. That's a better attitude to take. Did you ever sort of repair the friendship with Sukuth over it?
Well, we had grown apart over the last few months, and he said, like, when I messaged him about it at the time, it's just cut me off. I don't really care anymore. But we haven't spoken, I think, in over a year. I don't know if he... Yeah, I don't even know if he, like, really took it personally, or... Like, he was... I did notice there was the same person who thought that your apology was really cucky, wrote on my disavowal week. It was the same person. They had the exact same reaction to both
Well,
yours and
yeah.
mine disavowal.
Well,
And
I don't even remember who that was, but they were right to some degree. You
yes,
know, it's not the worst cuckery ever, but yeah, we both were weak at that time, and we get stronger as we keep going. And it's okay to admit when you're weak, but it's not okay to say it's okay to be weak. You know what I mean? You gotta recognize a man cannot get stronger until he recognizes his weaknesses.
like I'll put it to you, like sort of the growth in that time. It was at the end of 2016 that somebody said, "Oh, I can get you an interview with Blair Cottrell." And of course, even back then, here's what was written about him in the media, that he was this big
The
bad. Yeah,
neo-Nazi.
yeah. And so sort of like, oh, like, and I didn't end up uh, embracing, willing, wanting to interview him until the middle of 2018, which sort of gives you like sort of an indication where it's just like, just do this.
No shits left to give when you talk to Blair Cottrell. But again, it's like he's another one of those people where when you actually have a real conversation with him and you don't just watch the ABC edits of his interviews, it's like, oh, this guy's actually really reasonable and easy to get along with and well mannered and decent. Not a perfect person by any stretch, but who is among us?
Or learn to not trust some screenshot a lefty's got from 5 years ago purporting to be his Facebook account.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and look, even if he did say those things that people are sharing that he claims he didn't, what does it matter? There are people with bad opinions. There are people with wrong opinions. I've got some bad opinions. I've got some opinions that are quite likely wrong too. Where's the crime in any of that? Where's the need to disavow in any of that? Um, it's just talk. It's just noise on the internet. You know.
I think the event which I think basically got me to the stage where there's just no point in appeasing and having like any sort of optics was an event completely out of all of our control, which was the Christchurch massacre. And of course the statement
That
that
was a
Fraser
turning point.
yeah,
Yeah.
the statement that Fraser Anning put out on the night of it, basically saying this is the clash of civilizations, and he was considered the most horrible person for that. And the next day, of course, was his Melbourne meeting where Egg Boy assaulted him, and I remember that was the the libertarians who thought I was all right. That's when they completely cut me off, because what was it, the Australian Taxpayers Alliance? They put out a statement basically saying you should put Anning last below all communists and socialists, and then another libertarian said that he's basically Hitler, and I'm like, you serious? And so
He's
that
the
was
only he's the only politician we've had in memoriam in Australia, who actually called out the bankers. Actually said we need to do something about the banking situation in this country. Like, where is the talk about that? That's one of the most crucial issues in the economy, in the culture. We are being held by the balls by these international banking interests, and the usury is just destroying our people and our culture. Like, and he was actually heading in that direction with his policies and with his talk. The guy's a hero just for bringing it up. I wish he'd at least kept his seat. That would have been fun to have him stick around for a while.
Or the Bendigo Bank, they're the ones who are after him for bankruptcy. It's interesting that the left now, they now love that a bank is persecuting an individual. I mean, he doesn't owe money to. They're trying to make out individual mum and dad investors. No, it's a bank. It's a big bank, and Bendigo
Mm.
Bank, despite saying that it's a community bank, it's got privileges.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's the area you're just not allowed to touch.
Mm.
Is that because that's the mechanism by which they actually control us. They don't have control over our everyday life if they don't have control of the money supply. And so, yeah, you can't talk about it if you're a politician. And it's why I'll never ever run for public office. Because it's just a world of lies, and I've no interest in it at all. But yeah, Fraser Anning, that whole period was was intense, and it was in the last year when I was living out west where I was. And I remember, I'll never forget my feeling and reaction around that time with the Christchurch shooting and all the political fallout in New Zealand and here. That was a real, I think, a test for a lot of people of like, have you got the guts to continue openly speaking about these issues that, because I read the manifesto. I read Tarrant's manifesto straight away because it's like, well, it's out there. I've got to know. And the fact that they were trying to cover it up and hide it from people, it's like, why? Why not let people see what is making people make these decisions? And it was a pretty insane manifesto. It was all over the shop, but there were some really interesting points made that need to be discussed. Some things were brought up that need to be discussed. I don't think going into a mosque and shooting people is the way to do it. But the manifesto itself, the ideas put forward, and the fear that young men, like what it was a glimpse into the future. Tarrant was a glimpse into the future about the disenfranchisement of young white men in our own nations, in our own states. It could happen more if we don't solve these issues some other way. So we have to talk about it. And I made that decision after a fairly painful week of weighing it up, like, because there was all that talk about them. They were trying to link all of us and all of these different groups that we've been talking to and that are part of our community of thinkers. They were trying to link all of that to Tarrant and put blame on our people. And it's a scary thing to have happen in such a public way. But as always, it blew over and the conversation continues. Because at the end of the day, Tim, you and I are just normal people having real conversations, and we just won't lie. We just won't lie like they want us to.
Yeah. The main thing that annoyed me with the response I got from like conservatives and libertarians, like, you do know that after any terror attack, there's the government is going to crack down on civil liberties, but they weren't interested in defending free speech or preparing for any curb on civil liberties. They were just interested in saying we disavow. And this is, of course, and on this occasion, because he was deemed a far-right terrorist, that means you had the big government had the entire left on their side and the cucky right, and they had a blank check there. Because, and this is the amazing thing, what big government, the globalists and the big corporations managed to do to the left. They've managed to get them to embrace their agenda. They want ASIO to watch all of us. They want more surveillance, and they want the ability.
Hey guys.
they want the government to have the power to shut down websites such as 8chan, and all that the government had to do was, well, all the media and the corporations had to tell them was, Nazis are coming.
Yeah.
That's all they had to do. And they was like, yes, please save us, big government, from all of this.
Yeah, yeah. And, and what does that even mean if you're not afraid of Nazis anymore? If Nazi is no longer synonymous with Satan in your own mind, if you've reached the point where you've looked into it enough to go, all right, not everything they say about the Nazis is true, and actually they're probably not the worst people ever. And in fact, actually, Stalin's mob were far more bloodthirsty animals than the people they were fighting against. So, I'm just gonna not care if you call me a Nazi anymore, because whatever, it's all lies. The moment for me where I think it was another good turning point for me was in my journey into the libertarian world, where I was very warmly embraced by the libertarian community and invited to a lot of these events, and there was some people getting excited about my involvement because I'm articulate, because I'm a musician and I've got some talent that I can share with that community. It looked like there was a pathway for a career opportunity in that world. And so I started to negotiate and kick ideas around and explore some avenues there with some of the I guess you could say the big players in that little pond. And I won't name names because I still like them as people, but there was a moment where I was thinking about plugging what I'm doing, the James Fox Higgins Show and Rational Rise, into a well-funded bigger operation that would involve bringing new talent in and creating a lot more, commentary and helping to, groom people to become, public speakers like we are, and that I would have a leadership role in that. And this was all kind of being laid out for me.
Oh,
I fear I might have I
yeah.
froze up a little bit
I
there.
thought we lost you
I'll just
there at
backtrack.
the crucial moment.
The crucial moment. No, it's all right. I saw that. When I got told that I would have to refrain from talking to people like Blair Cottrell on my show because the sources of the money for this project were really anti-white nationalism and didn't want to have anything to do with it. When I was asked to be beholden to the financiers of this project, I just went, I don't want to do it. There's no amount you could pay me that I would agree to never talk to a certain type of person because you disagree with their politics. I will never, ever get into bed with anyone who attaches those strings to a project. And so I walked away from that opportunity and felt really good about it. And as far as I know, it's never come to fruit anyway. I'm not saying that's because I wasn't involved at all. I don't know if it had the momentum to do it. But it was a real learning for me to just go that my interest is actually in having real conversations and pursuing
You
truth.
mean really real conversations, not like the real conversations that Dave Rubin says he has.
Well, conversations where we don't shy away from any topic. I'm willing to talk about any topic, and I will remain willing to talk about any topic till the day I die. And yes, you got to be careful, but you've also got to speak the truth. I would rather die knowing that I've been truthful and bold in pursuing truth than just fully cuck out for money. So, ironically, that then led me to just go, hey, why don't I do something like that myself? And that was the beginning of Rationalized TV, where we're growing a platform now that is not just the James Fox Higgins Show or me and Sven and Rob. It's Uncuckables, it's Wilms Front, it's Dia, it's Dusty Bogan, it's John Mark from the Proprietarian movement in America. He's a really enthusiastic participant in the project, and we've got a physicist coming on to refute climate change this year. We've got a lot of shows planned, and it's going to be a really big year for Rationalized TV. So, and because I'm the captain of that project, and because I'm essentially the curator and carefully choosing the people I work with, the only hurdle that people have to get over is I need to see that they're willing to pursue truth honestly. I don't care what the beliefs are. Just, are you willing to talk about it and figure it out in an honest way? And if you are, then you can be part of it.
Even though there's been all those cucks and lols who've disavowed us, all of us in the Australian alt media community this year, we've all gone closer. You and I, of course, Maddie and Dave, there's Dusty and Dia, and like I don't think I am like telling tales out of school here when like I'll say like we've never had a big blow up or anything. Like the conversations that we have about just in general or about planning things, they're all very collegial and casual, and
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that we agree with everything each other says or like the way we do. We don't all like everything about the way each other works, but we're different people. And yeah, it's about respect and a higher commitment to pursuing truth.
And there's I was talking about that, how they try to connect you by associations, but this is the rule that I have and everyone should have, is that you're only responsible for what you say. It doesn't matter what a person you're associated with says. That's their problem. And since when in the history of media or journalism has interviewing or talking with someone meant you agree with all of them?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the game right now, is this pressure. They'll apply pressure to see who the cowards are and sort of draw them out and make them, run away. And it's that pressure that succeeded in making us cuck in the little ways that we did those years ago. But as the pressure mounts, as the political situation gets hotter and hotter in the West, when the bullets start flying, it will, at the end of the day, come down to tribal loyalty, tribalism and loyalty. And if you're not going to be loyal to your friends and stand by them, regardless of whether you fully agree with them, it's like, I'm not friends with people because I agree with them. If you can only be friends with somebody because you agree with them, then there's something seriously wrong with you. You know, I'm friends with people because they're good people, and because we have a mutual respect and a mutual understanding that we'll help each other when we can. It's about mutual service, and that's the Christian way to be neighbors and friends. And it's not about agreement.
Yeah, I've had a few, one in particular, who's messaged me saying, "Look at what Maddie said. Look at what James said. They're your colleagues." And I'm just like, yeah, well, yeah, that's what they think. That's not what I think. What's your point?
Hmm. Yeah, ask me anything, bro.
Mm.
I say that every time somebody starts to, be brave enough with me in real life to say, you've got some views that I think make me uncomfortable. My answer is always the same. It's like, cool, well, let's talk about it. Like, what do you want to know? And 9 times out of 10, by the end of the conversation, they agree with me on the thing that they were uncomfortable about, And it's not just because I'm persuasive. It's because I'm telling the truth about a lot of things that they're too afraid to, and they've got too many liars in their ears from the media and from academia and from their teachers and from their boomer parents and from their fembot friends, and they're too lied to be able to see the truth. And then when you just walk through it with them step by step, using logic and reason and speaking calmly, people tend, if they're smart people, they tend to agree with you by the end of it.
You talked about that project you were invited to front with
Don't make me
conditions
name names.
yeah, but I'm moving on to you've seen that type of deal in practice with the Groyper War and Turning Point USA. Any member of Turning Point USA who even expresses sympathy with the Groyper's grievances, which is, of course, dual loyalty, immigration, and, of course, degeneracy, then they were not just kicked out of Turning Point USA, but they were blacklisted through entire conservative Inc. That was the approach that they took. And Charlie Kirk and the rest of Conservative Inc. for a while, they basically tried to say, no, the Titanic's not sinking, until Ben Shapiro did that 45-minute speech about Nick Fuentes without naming him. But it began at Nick Fuentes tried to attend Politicon to confront Charlie Kirk, and he was escorted out by police. And they were more scared of the Groypers asking questions than actual communists.
Yeah, amazing, amazing next level cockery. I mean, that's Charlie Kirk taking the kind of response that we had to the pressure that we came under. It's probably more similar to your disavowal of Suketh, but it's amplified a million times to the most cuckish of all cuckery you can imagine. Yeah, Charlie Kirk's a complete nothing now. He's been completely destroyed. All credibility is lost, and anyone who takes him or Turning Point USA seriously anymore is a moron. So I absolutely salute Nick Fuentes and the Groypers and everything they achieved in that little battle in the culture war, because it was essential for those questions to be asked. Regardless of what the answers may be, it's essential that those questions that they were asking be asked.
And of course, when the Turning Point USA had their Student Action Summit in West Palm Beach, Florida, Nick Fuentes and Patrick Casey of the American Identity Movement at the same area, West Palm Beach, held their Groyper Leadership Summit. And Nick Fuentes repeatedly tried to get into the TPUSA, and he kept getting, he eventually got a move on notice by the Florida State Police. I remember when, Blair Cottrell was at Liberty Fest 2018, all the libertarians wanted him kicked out, but of course, because he's so big, they didn't have the guts to do it.
Well, not all the libertarians, and to his credit, Andrew Cooper, who founded and ran that event, he was very welcoming of Blair and was really happy to have him there, and has maintained that attitude at those events that it's a Big Ten event. It's not that Blair was getting a chance to speak publicly; he was just there.
He was just there.
But that was definitely enough to trigger a lot of libertarians, and it was kind of funny watching the way people like you and I saw him, and we were like, oh, let's go over and say hi. And that was the first time I met Blair. It was before I interviewed him on my show. My impression of him, I went in going, oh, I know what they say about him. I know what they want me to think about him. let's go see what he's really like. And the first impression was great. He was a lovely, very polite, very nice man, and the kind of guy, you'd want on your side in a fight, like, so. But to see the way a lot of people were squirming and whispering at the tables and pointing and that sort of thing, just him being there was another telltale sign of the kind of cowardice that's prevalent in all of the political movements. Most people are very afraid to touch or be near somebody who has had such nasty things said about them.
Like, they wouldn't freak out if somebody attended one of the conservative libertarian events who said that Stalin was right in everything that he did. They wouldn't freak out about that, want him turfed out, called the police to issue a move on notice. They
But
wouldn't care
but
at all.
but that's the thing. The thing I think that makes Blair Cottrell public enemy number one in the media's eyes, and the reason why cowardly, soy boys fear him so much, is because he's really masculine. You know, he presents himself as a very masculine being, and masculinity is the enemy at the moment in the culture. And so that's why I'm doing everything I can to develop my masculinity. I'm working out 3 times a day, and learning to shoot, and doing the things that men ought to do. And I'm hanging out more with men, and I'm not hanging out with women other than my wife anymore. And just trying to be a better man to raise my sons and be a better example of manliness to them. And there's plenty of other aspects to manliness, but I think it's just that, yeah, Blair's a manly dude, and that makes him a perfect selection to present as evil. And it's just simply not true.
Nick Fuentes, he's very scrawny looking 21-year-old. It's interesting that he's of Italian heritage and lives with this Italian mother, and of course we know what type of food Italians eat, very high in carbs, and he's consuming that, and he's still really skinny. There's something, I think,
Oh
that's the
man,
biggest
to be
scandal
20
about
years
him.
old, to
That's
be
the
20 years old again.
But I think that's the really big. I should send that through as a super chat. How can you
Yeah.
consume all this Italian food and be so skinny?
Where do you put that spaghetti, brother?
And then I'm not sure if the second half of the show, it's all about what is the best burger, and of course we know
Well,
that
that was in response to Richard Spencer and his very, very gay statement about the kind of burgers he likes, right? Did you see that? That was hilarious.
I don't know if it stemmed from that, but I do know. Well, Nick Fenders
I'm
wouldn't
pretty
talk
sure
about
it
it unless he loved his burgers, and basically the second half of his show is just basically a food critic show.
Yeah, yeah. Food's a good thing. Thank God for food. So
Yes.
should we get on to our topics? Because we've done an hour of catching up, which has been lovely, and it's great because a couple of people in the chats I see have been asking where the hell I've been, and yeah, it's basically I've just taken a holiday to do this move, to enjoy my son's birthday in December, then my 10-year anniversary, which was a fantastic
With your
weekend away with
wife?
my wife. Yeah. We had a brilliant time, and then Christmas came around, and then New Year, and then suddenly it's January, and I'm putting my studio together, and it's just just getting things in line. But amidst all of that, there's been a lot of planning going on for Rational Rise TV and the associated platforms that we're going to be launching this year. So I can't announce anything too much yet, but it's all kicking off from February, and it's going to be a year of massive growth. So I haven't gone anywhere, and I'm very keen to keep tackling these topics with you.
Yeah, and it's certainly great to have you back, and the audience tonight they've stuck around through all of our catching up and reflections.
Must be relatively interesting then.
So please
Thanks
join
for that,
us.
guys.
Please join us, those who are in the chat over on Entropy. We have got a question over there. You can ask this question, also send through a super chat. Charlie Brown, AU, question: should all regions be open to criticism, debate, religions, I think they meant, and discussion? Freedom of religion should be all cults, religions, not certain groups like Islam or Judaism excluded from free discussion. Yeah, I agree. All religions should be critiqued, and including atheism
And
is
we
a
need
belief that should be critiqued as well, and new religions such as climate change should be critiqued as well.
absolutely. And look, I think hi Charlie, by the way. I haven't seen Charlie in a while, but we used to interact a bit. And I think what he's getting at maybe is that there's this certainly in the world of the leftist, you can't touch Islam, but we're way beyond that in our world and the conversations we have. But still, a lot of people in our side of politics, Charlie Kirk being a prime example, are afraid to talk about the Jews and are afraid to talk about the Jewish religion and to even recognize that it's a separate and different non-Christian religion that has some very fundamental ideas that are incompatible with Western Christian values. And, they're Charlie Kirk and Dave Rubin and Jordan Peterson are all these, liars who want to put forward the idea that we live in a Judeo-Christian society. And it's just, if you begin to study history, it's simply not so. We've moved in parallel through history with the Jews with a great deal of conflict. And the thing that defines the Jewish religion in the world most, predominantly is that they are the people who reject the people who rejected Jesus Christ. They've rejected the true God, and they've chosen to serve the God of this world. So, that's controversial of me to say, but I'm talking about a religion here, and we do need to be able to discuss all religions, including mine, openly and critique them properly.
Yeah, definitely. If you're for debate anything, anytime, anywhere, then you should stick by that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll go to our first news story of the week, which was the Second Amendment gun rights rally in Richmond, Virginia, because Virginia has flipped and become a blue state. It used to be a swing state in presidential elections and also in its gubernatorial elections, but now it voted for Obama in 2008, 2012, and for Clinton in 2016. And at their recent state midterm elections, Democrats won control of both the legislatives, and of course they have the governorship with Ralph Northam, and of course progressives, when they have absolute power, what's one of the things they want to do? Take away people's guns. And so they've got a new gun control package of 8 bills, universal background checks, a red flag law. And red flag means, as the term would suggest, that someone's not, when they do a background check on somebody, there's a red flag if they've got a criminal history or mentally unstable, which of course can mean, as we've seen, you have the wrong political opinions.
Yeah, well, I mean, aside from the political opinions part, because obviously that's not true in Australia, because I got my shooter's license, as I mentioned earlier, with no problems. But in Australia, it's built into our legislation that if you have a criminal history, any crime relating to violence, drugs, or guns, you cannot own a firearm here. So that's the new normal in Australia, and we're very used to that being the case. But in America, that's still the Second Amendment is explicitly clear that the right to bear arms shall not be infringed, and that's a fundamental individual right in American culture and law. And for them to then come along and say, well, if we're suspicious of you, even if you haven't actually gone and shot somebody or there's no imminent threat that we can prove, just on suspicion or just on your track record in the past of being a criminal in any other area, we can take your guns from you. It's an attack on the American Constitution. So it was great to see so many patriots coming out openly carrying their automatic weapons in the streets of Richmond to protest those laws. And it was I watched the early hours of the morning in America when it was just getting started and people were beginning to gather. I was just about to head to bed here in Australia, and I saw some of the first footage of these men in tactical gear with their guns hanging on their chests. 50 or so men in this one little clip I saw just marching along towards the rallying point. And I said to myself, I think I tweeted about it too, it's going to be a really interesting day in America tomorrow because everyone, the media were totally hyping up
Oh yeah,
that there's going to be violence, and
yeah,
it was
so
all the Nazis.
yeah, it was going to be another Charlottesville, which was the Unite the Right
Or
rally.
worse, because there's guns everywhere, like if it did go the way of Charlottesville,
Well,
um,
that's what they wanted.
that's
That's
what they wanted. And it was so wonderful that it didn't, because what it tells you is that if American patriots get together, openly carrying their weapons and saying, MAGA, 4 more years, come and take them from us, we will not comply, just doing their basic, just doing their basic job as Americans to defend the American Constitution in a totally legal way, get them together. Where was Antifa? Running scared. They're not going to mess with the guys
well,
with the
because
guns. So now
also
America should do it
yeah.
everywhere.
Also, Antifa in the US, they are actually a militia organization. They're actually pro-gun. Like they actually go to shooting ranges to shoot guns. So they were
Well, what we've
quite
seen is that
conflicted.
the left fear the militia. Probably more than anything, because and the government fears the militia more than anything.
We do know that Australian Antifa, they're anti-gun, but they are, well, there has been a couple of their supporters who've used knives. That seems to be their weapon of choice. But yeah, Antifa over in the US, yeah, they embrace the Second Amendment, hence why, from what I heard, they were just around doing their normal surveillance. But
Yeah.
I couldn't believe the nerve of the mainstream media to label it a white supremacist rally. Because let's all remember the governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam. Here's a 1984 yearbook photo. There's a black pro Second Amendment protester. That is from. You can see that photo there. The man behind the sheets wants your guns. The reason why he didn't lose his job, he's a Democrat, Ralph Northam, is because he claimed he had no memory of the photo, even though it's on his page of this medical student's yearbook. He doesn't know if he's the man in the sheets or the man in blackface.
Well, is one worse than the other these days? It's hard to tell.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
well, it's a really interesting turning point, I think, for America, that this has happened. It's really fresh. It's only a few days ago it happened, and it happened so successfully and without hitch that I think we're going to see this happen more and more, where American patriots, and you're right, there was a diverse bunch of people there as far as political views go, but it's predominantly grassroots right-wing people who are pro Second Amendment, pro America. A lot of the lefties, a lot of the Antifa people just want to see America burn, and it's the right wingers who want to, preserve America as it stands. I don't think they'll succeed. I think America is going to fall one way or another as the union that it is currently. But that's fine, because people will get back to local culture, local laws, and every man being a sheriff is the lesson here. This is something that Kurt Doolittle says a lot: is every man is a sheriff. In an ideal world where men get together and stand up for their God-given rights. And the Constitution, is just a document. The Constitution can't protect you if you're an American. It can't prevent them from taking your guns away. But it is a reflection of your God-given right to determine, your own future. And it's very interesting times to see this emerging. And I think it was really good that this one that there was no violence, there were no problems, and that everyone behaved themselves. Because you see now today in Seattle, there's been another shooting, and the media are right on it straight away, because they're in damage control mode now, because they've seen that 30,000 or 50,000 Americans with guns can gather peacefully. Whether or not they agree politically on many things, they get together peacefully and nothing happens. But they still have to make it out that white people, nationalists, Republicans, and guns are all evil and have to be shut down.
yeah, they even took their rubbish with them after the protest.
Fancy that. They care about their community. They care about the commons. They're not shitting on the commons like all of these lunatic leftists are.
Well, some of them literally shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And towns like Seattle are becoming increasingly unlivable because there's human shit and homeless people everywhere. Why is that? Why is that happening? Well, I'll tell you the two main reasons: multi-culti and global banking. They're the two root causes of the decline that America is facing in these major cities. And you're mad to live in a major city in America now, like especially the coastal.
Oh, lost you there for a moment. Oh, we're still live here on the air, but James he hasn't got his flashbang internet connected to his studio yet. It's at his home. He'll be back there in a moment. I'll just put the entropy link in again in the chat while we're trying to get back James here. We've only had one question tonight, so come on and join us over on entropy. I'll put the link again in the chat. So yeah, this is, well, your best time to ask me in particular a question. Someone's at 8 and 8. Tim is a dangerous moderate. Well, can you elaborate on that? He is not a white nationalist. No, I'm not. But I definitely recognize that demographics change a nation. Alright, we'll try and get him back here. Tim, do you disavow Liberty Fest? No, I'm not going to go there again. Don't plan to go into any more future Liberty Fests. Charlie Brown AU's got another question. Does voting need to change to over 25-year-olds and net taxpayers? No more voting. Free socialism welfare state. I've heard people propose that before.
The person whom you're trying to reach is currently unavailable. Please leave a message after the beep.
Hi, James. I'm having fun without you. Maybe they did shut him down. Was it Swad01 said there? Anyone else who's, because a few people have got the Unshackled's Skype address, which we use to Skype guests in. So if you've got our Skype address and are in the chat, give me a call while James is gone. Ring, ring, why don't you give me a call? Did pretty well to last. Poor film cop, ring Richard W. Well, we just uploaded his part 2 commentary report from Tiger Mountain on the Australian bushfires, and he explores that theory that the bushfires have cleared a high-speed rail path, and I've previously said that it's unlike, well, if government, they've been talking about high-speed rail interstate for, I don't know, how long, 30 to 50 years? And so I don't think they're going to get cracking on one now. And we have compulsory acquisition in the Australian Constitution. Most people know that because of the movie The Castle. So they could just acquire all those properties over the path anyway. Why would you need all that destruction anyway? So it says Tim will have to go solo. And like, I have done solo shows before, a few on Wilms fronts. The problem is, well, I'm not as talented as Nick Fuentes, where I can talk for 2.5 hours just by myself and never get flustered or anything like that. I'm not as highly skilled. He's a 1 in 6 billion type person. Peter V, it's the vibe of the thing, referring to that line from the Castle. That's basically the SJWs these days. If something's factually incorrect, they just say, well, this is the vibe that I get. As of course, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez once said, some people are more worried about being 100% truthful, factual, rather than morally right. And of course, was that Snopes, the fact-checking website, if right-wing people they say something which is not 100% accurate, then they rate it as half true or mostly false. Tim sells his used polo shirts to Japanese men. Why would I do that? That seems like... That's a weird thing to say. I read that question from Charlie Brown AU. James has just contacted me. I'll see what he says. But yeah, when we're in pre... Yeah. Hi James, I got you on speaker here on live.
We might have to make do with telephonic communications for
Sorry?
We might have to make do with telephonic communications. Have you got me?
I might. My phone is not good. You're on Telegram.
I'm not anymore just because I have an old phone because my other phone died. So it's pretty much, at this stage I don't seem to be able to reconnect to the internet. I think I was sticking a little too many truth bombs there and always they shut it down.
I'll dig up the Skype number where you can call from your phone into Skype.
Perfect.
From your phone. Yeah, the show's going to go on. No one's going to stop us, not the internet overlords.
We'll find a way. I'll send a carrier pigeon if I have to.
Carrier pigeon. Yes, as the Gropers showed, they can't stop... they can ban people from Facebook and Twitter, but they can't stop people going to real-life events and asking questions.
Absolutely. So, I'll grab that number.
I'll get it to you.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember my Skype number off by heart. I'll dig it up somewhere. So while I'm doing this... Oh, I know how to look up my Skype number. But I won't reveal it to you all. So I'll just get rid of the Skype thing there. And I'll... bring back here, just bear with me. I'm not as talented. See, I'm not as talented as Nick Fenter, so I can't do two things at one time. So where are we here? We're not going to get the whole map of Australia here. Never mind. Alright. But I can get my Skype number now. Where is it? Oh, there it is, there. I just messaged it to James. This is what we are. The show must go on. Hello, who's this? I know who that was. I've got caller ID. And they didn't really want to say much on air. Oh, you get it back?
Yeah, I got it back. I think the feds realised we weren't going to quit, so they decided to give up. It's a victory for our people.
I just sent you the Skype number, so you can save that for future reference, just in case this happens again.
Yeah, great. Hopefully not. And yeah, apologies to everyone at home. It's always sucky when the boomer tech shuts us down.
Yeah. Yeah, if a certain someone still had a Facebook page, they could make a video saying, look at that tech glitch up, ha ha ha.
Yeah. Well.
But they can't now, so too bad for them.
And good thing we don't care what they think anyway.
No.
All right, so we were about to start. We started on Richmond. That's where we were up to.
Yes, but we were going to talk, maybe because the next topic was, of course, Davos. Maybe that's why you cut out.
Ah, they knew. I've been getting a lot of, I don't know about you, but I've been getting on Twitter a lot of promoted tweets about Davos with, a lot of, they're all polls saying which topics would you like to hear talked about at this summit? And every time I see them, I note that there's no discussion about global banking, and there's no discussion about multiculturalism, and there's no discussion about white genocide or any of the things that are probably the most pressing matters for Western civilization. So I just reply to every promoted tweet asking them if they're going to put those on the agenda.
In case you don't know what we're talking about, Davos is the the shortened word for the annual World Economic Forum, which takes place in Davos, Switzerland, which is an alpine skiing town where all the globalist elite, the politicians, the bankers, the businessmen, the non-government organizations all get together, and how can we create a better global community. And I'm old enough to remember when the left used to hate globalization, and they'd riot outside these economic forums, but they've got their golden girl there this year, Greta Thunberg, who gave it was an 8-minute speech this time. It was double the length of her 4-minute "How dare you" speech, where she again called for decarbonisation, and now she's claiming, even though she was really upset at the UN in New York where Donald Trump walked past her, she's like, "Oh, I don't want to meet Donald Trump anymore. He doesn't accept the science or the experts." Even though we could tell that she was really upset by him ignoring her,
snubbing her. Yeah. Well, she should be in school. She is the world's biggest truant. And her parents should be ashamed of themselves. And that's all I have to say about Greta.
Well, her father runs her Facebook page. Facebook bug revealed that to the world.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. Now, she's an absolute puppet. And, the rhetoric shifts like quicksand, as you say. She's one moment annoyed that Trump snubs her, and then the next moment she doesn't want to meet him anyway. It's the most... But the thing is, this is normal behavior for your average soy boy, feminist, leftist retard. It's just normal behavior to be that childish and capricious, instead of actually having principles or wanting to discuss genuine change. She just wants to she's just there to make everyone feel ashamed. That's her entire mission. And she even recently, I saw in a headline anyway, I didn't read the whole article, but I saw that she was quoted as saying, "I told you to panic about climate change. Why isn't anybody panicking?" It's like, yeah, people are panicking. Way too many people are panicking.
There's people who say, "Oh, we're obsessed and triggered by this 16-year-old girl." I did my best for as long as I could to ignore her because I didn't want to give her a platform. But when she gave that disturbing speech at the UN in New York, and people said that was on par with the best speeches in history. Of course, that was the catchphrase from it. But as I said, it was 4 minutes. It was full of assertions which she couldn't back up and which were later debunked. Yeah.
Golden Shekels is saying in the comments, and quite rightly, that she is childish because she's a child. And that's right. That's why I say her parents should be ashamed of themselves, and anyone else, any of the other grown-ups who are putting her up as a poster child for this political movement should be ashamed of themselves. She should be, as she said, she should be at home. She should be in school. She shouldn't be, flown around the world and yachting around the world to shame everyone. She's a puppet of very, very evil grown-ups. And I don't hate Greta. I mean, I hate her message, but I have nothing but sympathy for her, because she's like one of those children who are trapped in a pedophile ring. She's being exploited and abused by evil people.
I saw that she met Prince Charles at Davos, which the British royal family now has fully embraced the climate change agenda. Prince William has got some climate fund that he's launching this year, and the Queen herself, she's been pretty apolitical her entire reign, but said in her Christmas message that she admired young activists who want to care for the environment and climate. And so in her...
It won't save them. It won't save them. The guillotines and the bayonets are coming, just like they came for Nicholas the Passion Bearer. These globalist communist Satanists want to destroy all sovereignty because they hate Jesus Christ, and they are going to tear the monarchy apart. And I'm getting more and more convinced as time goes on that Meghan Markle is a plant just put there to unravel the royals and prepare them for removal and assassination. I could be wrong.
Well, you're of Irish heritage, and I'm sure you remember what the British have done to that nation.
Or I'll never forget what the fucking English did to us. Never forget.
And it was interesting because Mark Collett was on XYZ Live Monday night. He was on the last episode of the Uncuckables in 2019. That he talked about how the Irish Catholics have got their revenge on the Protestant Ulster invaders because they won the most seats in the Northern Irish UK constituency. Sinn Féin got more seats than the Democratic Unionist Party, and Mark Collett said it's basically because the Irish Catholics have outbred their opponents.
Fancy that, yeah. You know, breeders are winners. Let's put it that way. Breeders are winners, and this is why Islam is growing so steadily. You know, they're fantastic breeders. They know how to make babies. Those people.
The Catholics, they're probably the last Christians on earth who know how to have large families.
Yeah, and you know, isn't that organization really doing its best to tear itself apart from the center? It's really interesting to see the political shifts around Catholicism, and I've got a lot of friends who are, you know, trad Catholics, and there's that distinction is beginning to emerge as a separate religion in some ways. You know, that they don't recognize that the seat of the Pope is actually legitimately occupied, and they are standing apart from the Vatican.
Savnik said the English owe you reparations.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah, I think I like this guy. Yeah, give me my reparations now, British. They gave my family citizenship, but you know, I haven't had any real benefits from that yet, so I'd like some cash.
While we're on the theme of religion, we found out that there's going to be a new church founded in Australia this week by Magda Szubanski. So this is what
church?
She tweeted this.
You can't have that word. You can't have that word. The church belongs to Jesus.
Yeah. She was replying to this tweet from Sue Barrett, who I have no idea who this Twitter user is. I'm not religious. However, if we want real change to happen, re climate action and sustainable future, why don't we organize ourselves like churches do, give people a place to go? And Max Szubanski has retweeted that with a comment, "Hi friends, and I've started down this path tentatively called the Church of Higher Love. I'm sick and sad of having no spiritual community which I truly belong. Foundational belief is the foundational belief will be complete acceptance and affirmation of LGBTQIA plus people. Will keep you posted."
And then the prayer emoji. I reckon they should probably just go with the Church of Gomorrah. That's what they should do. Call it the Church of Gomorrah.
But there's already a gay-centric Christian church in Australia, which is the Metropolitan Community Church, which is the one that Dia and Neil Erickson infamously went to in Melbourne. So why doesn't Magda Szubanski just join that church, unless she basically has a massive ego and wants to found her own separate church, which she can direct completely?
Yeah, you know, they don't want to go anywhere near Jesus because they know what's coming to them. You know, they want to pretend that Jesus isn't Lord, and they want to steal the word church, and they want to, you know, right there they're saying, hey, let's co-opt and subvert the structure of the church to try and impose our values on the rest of the world. Instead of actually doing what people do, Christians do in church, which is humble themselves before the cross and bow down to Jesus Christ as Lord. They don't get it though. They think it's fairy stories, and they think that your sexual fetishes and your personal flavor of sin is a foundational belief on which you can build a church. It's hysterical.
Yes, we will see if that will come to fruition or anything, or whether it's just a thought bubble by her.
Yeah. The fat thought bubble that'll just pop, hopefully.
Yeah, I noticed that she popped up earlier in the month. She filmed a video with Egg Boy to not raise money for bushfire relief, but to raise money for a mental health fund to deal with the aftermath of the bushfires, which, well, you hope the money that they raised, they didn't donate it themselves, it's other people have donated, actually goes to where it's needed, because as we've seen with the Red Cross this week, they've only dispersed a third of their the donations they've collected this summer to the bushfire recovery. They're banking the rest for future emergencies, and then 11% going to cover administrative costs, which I hope they don't mean those annoying people who are at shopping centres, those aggressive salespeople who try to sell you on how good their charity is.
Well, that's the thing about administrative costs, is you can put just about anything in that basket. But give it time, I suppose. It's interesting though that these things emerge because everyone just defaults to organizations like the Red Cross, a Christian organization, right? We have trusted these organizations up till now, and then we begin to see the convergence and the cuckery and the stepping away from Christian values in a lot of these organizations, and it's the way the world is heading. It's the great falling away.
And we saw last year White Ribbon, the anti-domestic violence charity, that went into liquidation, and despite them having all these anti-domestic violence ambassadors, they had this bloated bureaucracy, and they spent a lot of their budget on marketing and promoting glossy brochures to give out, and that's why a lot of people call that Charity Inc. Of course, working for a charity, it makes you feel good, but it's basically, a lot of them are run like businesses, and they outsource to those aggressive marketing companies. I think Peter Mac is the worst. I see them all the time, and you shouldn't need to sell charity. That's not the point.
Well, or you could just get back to the original Christian model of charity, which is that it begins with you serving others, and that means face to face. Like, find the homeless guy in your neighborhood and give him a hand. You don't need mega corporations between you and good Christian deeds. And this is again the problem of this trend towards globalism and massive multinational growth in all of these organizations. They have to become corrupt because they're of the world. Charity is a personal contribution from one human being to another, and that's the Christian practice. So I think all of this just points towards that we're headed towards a breaking down of the global web, and a refounding of our local traditions, and that's really important.
We should also touch upon the new super virus, which is called coronavirus, which it's infected, a whole city in China is now in lockdown. It's in Hubei province. More than 500 people have been infected. There have been 17 deaths. Of course, this is a communist regime, so some people suspect that those infected could be as high as 10,000, and some people doomsdaying, saying it could be as deadly as Spanish flu, which killed 50 million people. So Wuhan is the city that's in lockdown, and in 2019, we've basically, in Australia and in the US, have been talking about the rising threat of communist China and their plan for world domination. And when I heard about this new super virus infecting a whole city in China, my first thought went to, is this a CIA bioweapon that's been dropped in China? Of course, that's just a theory, but that's where my sort of mind wanders, because we know that the CIA, they've developed bioweapons over the years, and if they have,
and the CIA have been very involved in the whole Hong Kong debacle as well.
Yes.
Like they really want to President Xi and China is the new Germany and the new Hitler, and it's a fair comparison too, because Xi is one of the most loved leaders in the world. The Chinese people adore him, and he's done really, really great things for China on the whole. He's also done some things that you could call evil, absolutely, but that's what world leaders do. And yeah, he's a real nationalist, and he really believes in the Chinese identity. And you look at the parade they put on for him in that for China in the recent celebration of the founding of the People's Republic, and it made me think of the kind of parades that the Nazis put on for Hitler too. And so because he is representative of national identity and the success of a people who basically remain homogenous and will not allow foreigners to come in and subvert them or water down their gene pool, he's going to be increasingly painted to be the nightmare demon that they painted Hitler to be as well, in my opinion.
And it also sounds like something, if you wanted to cripple China and you were the CIA, that'd be a good way to do it.
Yeah. Somebody's saying here in the comments, he's a commie, but it's, that's such a
he's a fascist. He's a fascist. Yeah. It's a fascist state.
That's right. It's definitely he's not Mao. He's not Chairman Mao, and China today is not China in 1960 or 1970 or 1980. It's a very different place. And, I would recommend that if people want to know about China, they should go there and visit it and get a taste of it. I'm not saying you have to go there to know about it, but we get fed a lot of bullshit about China, especially by the ABC in Australia. They lie a lot about China because China has to be public enemy number one because it's the most successful ethno-state on the planet. It's succeeding. It's an ethno-state. Oy vey, shut it down.
Well, they do have what's called a one China policy, which they want to unite all the, well, that's why eventually they want Hong Kong to come under the People's Republic of China, because at the moment it's one country, two systems, because Hong Kong was a British outpost. And of course there's Taiwan as well, official name Republic of China. They eventually want to unite People's Republic of China and Taiwan as well. They recently had their presidential election where the current anti-Beijing president was re-elected. And they talk about foreign interference from Beijing, but of course, as we were just discussing, it goes both ways. Of course.
Well, I mean, they point that foreign interference finger all the time at Russia as well, and at Putin. And it's just China and Russia are these two major world powers who won't bow down to Israel in the same way that the rest of the world does, and the way the Western world does. The East has not bowed down in the way that the West has. And it's of course they have to be painted as nightmare places and hellscapes to make us hate them. But we know nothing. If your knowledge about Russia and China is entirely based on media of today, you know nothing about Russia and China.
Swad01 has said the food must be terrible in China. Well, that reminds me that
it's fantastic.
I saw an article just in the last few hours. I didn't bring it up. That apparently this outbreak is caused by apparently a delicacy in Chinese cuisine is eating bats, and of course we all know how toxic bats are. When Ozzy Osbourne bit the head off a bat and had to be treated for rabies.
Well, they don't all have rabies, but I don't think I'd eat a bat. I ate some interesting stuff when I was in China. I ate some insects, but just for the novelty of it. I think I ate a scorpion, if I recall. It wasn't, It just tasted like fried spice to me, crunchy fried spice. So it's nothing to write home about. But no, there's lots of great food in China, and there's lots of diversity in China too. That's the funny thing. There's diversity in China like there's diversity in Europe. The white race is not a homogenous culture or a homogenous race. We're made up of many different subgroups and many different subcultures. And Europe managed to rise to be the epitome of progress in science and the arts and culture, and Christianity. It's the center of Christendom in the world. But Europe is not a homogenous culture, and China is very much the same. People think of the Chinese as being one race. There are so many ethnic minorities and different groups in China who have ancient traditions and different foods and cuisines and clothing and music, and there's heaps of diversity there.
Now, I've just put the entropy link in again, so please come on over. Charlie Brown's the only one who's asked us questions, so please come over and participate. Now, obviously, it's only 3 days until Australia Day, and we haven't had, as has happened, I think, the last 5 years, the far left's campaign, assisted and amplified by the mainstream media, about it was originally changed the date, that we needed a day that wasn't Invasion Day and was more inclusive, but now it's abolish Australia Day. Australia is so terrible that we don't even deserve a day. And of course, the anarchists and socialists now abolish Australia, and of course
it'll never be enough. It'll never be enough.
Even though there was before Australia was settled, the continent, I should say, by the Europeans, there wasn't even a state. The various Aboriginal tribes each had their own individual nations where they went to war against each other. There was no actual nation before Australia.
Yeah. What can I say? You know, they want to destroy everything that is good and true and beautiful in the world. And Australia brought a lot of good. The creation of Australia as an idea and as a place, you know, and as a British colony, you know, despite the teething problems that you have in every new colony, it brought a lot of good to this place, you know, and they wouldn't be able to be whinging at us on the internet if we hadn't come here. So,
and if you actually study Australian history properly, yes, there were battles between the European settlers and the local Aboriginals, but there are also times of friendships, negotiations, and collaboration as well. It was a mixed history.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
But I noted that the left, they've only got so much outrage in them, and they've been so busy going after Scott Morrison, over his government's response to the bushfires, and of course blaming climate change for it. They've had their various hashtag Morrison fires. What do they call him? Smoko now. That's his nickname. Oh, he's not the Prime Minister more. He's the Crime Minister. It's been actually. We should. Express our condolences to Scott Morrison today. He just lost his father, and if you're the Prime Minister of Australia, obviously your family is sort of your escape to sort of that crazy life, and so that's sad that he lost his father today. And there was also 3 US firefighters who died today after a large air tanker crashed fighting bushfires in southern New South Wales near the ACT. So there's been it's been a big crappy afternoon in that regard. But going back to the point that I was making, that's what the left's outrage has been focused on, and
it's just a power grab, you know. Like Deanna's saying in the chats, imagine believing ScoMo is the head of the snake. This is where the SJWs are at. It's so true. Imagine thinking that ScoMo is relevant in any way, you know, and isn't just another pawn for the cucked political parties in our country.
Right. He can't even stop Yasmin Abdel-Magid, who doesn't even live here anymore. She lives in London, getting a $20,000 taxpayer-funded grant from the Arts Council to study in Paris. She's going from another country to another country, courtesy of the Australian taxpayer. He can't even stop that.
I gained an interest in Australian politics again when Fraser Anning came on the scene, because he was changing it up and having a conversation that hadn't been had yet. And as soon as he left, I lost all interest in it. It's just a game of liars and scoundrels and parasites, the whole lot of them. And any good men who go into that game will not be good men for long.
Yes, it's the ultimate corrupter. And there are a lot of people there who are trying to do the right thing, but it's such a game that you have to navigate, and you've got to deal with all the media stakeholders, everything. It's a really hard life. There definitely are those that I should say are trying to do the right thing.
It's a hard life, but it's also a charmed life because they're living off other people's labor. You know, they're playing a game of lies, paid for by our labor, and that's the problem with it. And it's they have to do from day one what we were talking about earlier that I refuse to do on a small scale, which is, you know, lie for money. You won't get the campaign support that you need if you talk to Blair Cottrell. So, or if you acknowledge that global finance is probably the crux of the problem in the world at the moment, or that multiculturalism is failing. If you touch those topics, you will not get any money, and you cannot get a position. You know, if you and I were ever to run, it would, unless the landscape changes dramatically of politics in this country. If you or I were ever to run for office, we wouldn't get started. We wouldn't even launch, because we wouldn't have the funds to campaign properly against all of the liars who get heaps and heaps of money to lie.
I think the only Australian politician of recent times has never apologised or backed down on anything is David Linehelm.
He's I like David. I like David a lot. He's a tough guy, but and he's based, but he still has that libertarian position that I think is not gonna hold any relevance for very much longer.
I remember, because what they do with us is like dig up old things that we've said. And when he was first elected, David Linehelm, some Fairfax journalists scoured Cadillacsy Files, which is a libertarian blog, where he referred to Julia Gillard as a mangy dog. And of course, you can't say that about St. Julia. And so the Fairfax journal rang up and saying like, oh, can you confirm that you said this? And his response was, "Oh, he gives a fuck if I did."
Yeah, good on you, David. Yeah, that's great. And you know, it's interesting though. The people around you, you know, really tend to shape you as a politician, you know, and you see this with Trump, how ineffectual he's become because of the people that he's surrounded himself with, and how weak he's starting to become on the very things that he campaigned on to win. But it was funny after I started heading down the nationalism path, after I walked away from the libertarian world, a friend of mine relayed to me that one of David Linehelm's handlers, or one of his assistants or whatever, who was involved in his media stuff. I'm not going to name names again because it doesn't matter. But relayed through a friend of mine that they wanted me to take my interview with David, my interviews, I think I've interviewed him twice. They wanted me to take them down because where I'm headed now in my political views and conversations is going to reflect badly for them in the political world. And my response was, well, not David, but the handler who was asking this, okay, just tell him to get in touch with me and we can talk about it. Like, he can give me a call and we can talk about it. And surprise, surprise, I never got the call. But then anyway, David retired, right? So, well, at least from the federal.
He sadly lost his bid for the New South Wales upper house. And of course he's gone back to the private life, right? Which is good for him. I think he's a good guy and he'll be happier there. He was in the news recently with his the defamation case that Sarah Hanson-Young brought against him over. Well, it wasn't just the "Stop Shagging Men" comment. The court battle was all about whether Sarah Hanson-Young said all men are rapists. And so the court found that no, Sarah Hanson-Young didn't say that. It was the court found that he defamed her by implying she was a misandrist and a hypocrite.
Right, so, he defamed her by saying she was a misandrist. I'm pretty sure she's called him a misogynist a whole bunch of times.
So he has to pay her $120,000 in damages.
Oh, snap! That's a bad ending for that story. Ah, damn! Imagine having to pay Sarah Hanson-Young anything. She ain't worth $50.
Well, she did get re-elected to the Senate, so we're stuck with her.
Oh, good Lord, have mercy on us.
But yeah, we've segued quite a bit, and Maddie and Dave aren't even here tonight. They're the kings of tangents and segues. We're talking about, yes, the leftist outrage mob online, saying that it's all to do with climate change, these bushfires. And the point that I was going to make is that they've left, they haven't got any energy left to rage about Australia Day, Invasion Day. It snuck up on them, and so they're sort of like, oh, shit,
shut it down quick.
But of course the biggest Invasion Day protest, it's not where it's not where a lot of Aboriginal people actually live, like the remote community where they like in the Northern Territory where they are the majorities. It's in the inner cities where a lot of Australians of Aboriginal descent, they organised the protest there, and of course, the most infamous one was 2018, where the organiser Tiny Onus Williams famously said, "Fuck Australia, hope it fucking burns to the ground." Well, she got her wish somewhat this summer, so I hope she's pleased with herself. So it's organised, the Melbourne one, by the Warriors of Aboriginal Resistance, and this is the poster they've got here: how to act in solidarity for Invasion Day 2020. Print flyers and poster up your local area. Well, you have to cut down a lot of trees to do that. That's not very...
There's not many left here.
Ask local cafes and shops and organisations to put up a poster. Spread the word on social media using hashtag Abolish Australia Day and hashtag pay the rent. Bring cash and cards on the day to pay the rent.
How about you build a house and then I'll pay the rent?
This will go to funeral funds for families. Somebody pointed out that with all the taxpayer subsidies that Aboriginal communities and individuals have received over the years, that I'd say we've paid the rent and then some. But this is... They refer to the...
Pay the rent on what?
I'm just saying, if they want the rent paid, I think we've pretty much paid it. But you would only be able to, like, if you accept their argument, you would only have to pay rent on the land itself, because all of Australia that around us was built by the Australian settlers. And you and I, we both adhere to Austrian economics, and that you can only own land or own, it's only yours if you mix it with your labor, then it's yours.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, it's I'm so tired of this topic, to be honest, because it's just so obvious once you think about it. They're nomadic people. They had a very sparse and small population. There's no way they could stake any kind of claim to the whole continent that we now call Australia. You know, there might be some areas in Australia that were, you know, sacred sites or whatever that you could argue, you know, need to be acknowledged as sacred sites, and, you know, maybe should be, you know, given to the Aboriginal people to use as a nation. I'm a nationalist, so what that means is I believe that every nation, and Australia has become a nation of sorts, but it's so damn mixed up. It's not really a nation, you know. Australia, when it was founded, was an extension of the British Empire. So it was the British nation arriving in a new land and giving it a new name. But I'm a nationalist, so I believe that every people should have a home where they're unmolested by others. I'm actually, these days, I'm perfectly okay with changing the name of Australia Day to Invasion Day. Yeah, the Brits invaded and we won.
I would prefer to call it Settlement Day.
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just the name. That's the point, you know.
Because an invasion implies that, because on January 26, 1788, Governor Arthur Phillip, he put the flag there. There wasn't Aboriginals waiting for him with spears, and there weren't all these troops waiting to fire upon them. That's not what happened. It wasn't like the Normandy Day invasion.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. But, you know, the thing that people don't understand we've been so separated from the roots of who we are, you know, and this is what is the saddest thing about what's happened to the Aboriginal people, you know, by the arrival of the British people, is that our culture has been imposed on them, and many of them have lost touch with their own history, their own lineage, you know, their own traditions, and it would be great if they have an opportunity to reconnect with their own people, you know, but that can't happen at the same time as them being modernized and westernized and Christianized, you know, but that's a loss of culture. We have modernized most of the Aboriginal people, we've Christianized them, we've westernized them. It's an invasion and an overriding of their traditional culture. Now, if their traditional culture is really important to them, then they should revert to it, and you know, it would be good to give them a place where they can go and live in their traditional way. But they can't have all the modern conveniences then.
Yeah,
can't have the things that aren't then. And if they want to be part of Western culture, then we need to get past this this blood feud notion that they're trying to roll up. And again, the truth is, you go out into the world, and most normal people that you meet, you know, mixed blood Aboriginal people who are westernized and Christianized, they're fine. They're great people. They understand. You know, Anthony Dillon, Jacinta Price are two public examples of people who are of Aboriginal descent, and they're totally normal, nice people, and you can have a real conversation with them.
Yeah. I've got Jacinta Price coming on my new Wilms Front Monday show, so I'm sure she'll have a lot to say about...
She's a great lady. I really like Jacinta. She's a great lady, and I wish more of her people, you know, the people who identify as Aboriginals and believe in that that nation and want that nation to thrive. I wish they would listen to her as a leader, because she's somebody who's presenting a pathway for really peaceful and joyful integration. But it's not what that's about, because they're not the people who are pushing this animosity. It's not the Aboriginals themselves who are pushing the animosity. It's all these do-gooding, globalist, communist
Adam Bant, the member for Melbourne.
Yeah. It's, you know, like, it's horrid.
How much electricity and modern amenities does his electorate use on a daily basis?
Yeah, but the thing about identity, you know, and culture is the issue. And at the end of the day, when you look at human behavior, people care the most about the people that they are most closely related to. You know, I care about my family more than I care about you. Sorry, Tim, but it's just the reality. I care about my family more than I care about anyone else. And nation and race is an extension of family. So when you have a whole bunch of people living together in a region who have come from the same origins, and they have that common history, and they share blood, you know, and they are, for all intents and purposes, a family, they become a tribe or a nation, or eventually a nation state. And when that gets too big and too muddled up, people lose their sense of identity, and then conflict arises. Because we need identity, you know.
We've nearly gone 2 hours, basically, because we spent the first hour just catching up with each other and doing some reflection. So we might wrap it up soon. I'll finish going through this Warriors of the Aboriginal Resistance flyer. Hold a banner, making night for the rally. They love these banner making events. Of course, they end up spelling things wrong, and
I reckon actually this whole thing is actually a plant from some major print media company who are looking to get new business. I reckon that's all it is.
Restart the printing presses, because of course everything's digital these days.
Our sales are down. Nobody's making flyers anymore. Quick, we need to rally up some outrage and get some flyers, because they really work.
The more creative and witty, the better. Think about all the injustices the last year and make your voice heard.
Can they be more specific?
Bring at least 3 friends to the rally.
If you have them.
Yeah. Download the radio app TuneIn Ad. That's using Western technology, which will live stream speakers and bring your portable speakers. That also chews up a lot of electricity as well, a carbon footprint. We need our voices heard. Think about what else you can offer. Water, snacks, sunscreens. I wouldn't disagree with that because Australia Day is normally a hot day. I remember when I was able to back in 2018 morph into the Invasion Day crowd and not be recognized like I would be now. I noticed that a lot of the Invasion Day attendees were drinking Slurpees. Like, that's the pinnacle of like Western capitalist imperialism, a 7-Eleven Slurpee full of a
yeah, man, we're in the hottest country in the world. Bushfires are raging, but we got ice everywhere.
Yes,
ice drinks everywhere.
and those artificial sweeteners, syrup stuff. That's totally
corn syrup, infused with soy.
Oh, we're cane sugar in Australia. We have cane sugar in our artificial sweeteners. In the US, it's fructose corn syrup.
Right. It's all sugar cane here. I see.
I've got a few more things on the list. How you?
I got all night, Tim. Unless the feds shut me down again, I'm all good.
Everyone's still watching. We're going to talk a bit more about religion. I'll bring up this Daily Mail article here because. Here we go here. Aussie Sikhs and Muslims no longer have to wear a helmet on bikes while other riders still face fines of up to 344 for cycling without one. This is in the ACT. Of course, helmets in, I think, all states and territories are compulsory, but because it's difficult for Muslim women and Sikh men to put a helmet on, they've got
he's already wearing one. Look at him. He's got a perfectly good helmet on. That would actually have some serious padding in it. That's probably more effective than the plastic garbage they make us wear.
I don't think that the headscarf is going to. That looks pretty like just cloth, like really thin cloth.
If people want to give themselves brain damage, just let them do it. Whatever.
Well, of course, you and I, we still have that libertarian streak that if you want to ride a bike without a helmet, that's your free choice. But if you split your head open, you should pay the medical bills for your stupidity.
Yeah, that would be ideal. I certainly don't want to pay for somebody else's stupidity. Maybe I'll pay for my kids' stupidity, but I'm a parent, so it's my job to teach my kids to ride bikes safely and wear helmets, and if they don't do it, that's my responsibility and theirs. It's not yours or anyone else's.
Yeah, but I think Medicare is still going to fund, the same as everyone else, these Sikhs and Muslims who don't wear a helmet due to religious reasons. So it's not equality before the law. But why isn't there some...
When has there been?
Some helmet manufacturer that has designed, because they've invented for Muslim women the burkini.
Yeah, they need the termit now. The termit.
Or the helmet.
Yeah, well, let them have it. I don't. If the Sikhs and the Muslims want to not wear bike helmets, it's perfectly fine with me. I have no problem with that law.
Well, I've stated my position. I think that we should all get that choice.
Yeah, ideally, but something that my sons often cry about, as kids do when they're witnessing that there are different perks to being of different ages. I hear this line a lot at home. It's not fair, and I've just of late taken to telling my sons really bluntly, "Yep, it's not fair. It's not fair. There will never be fairness. You're different ages, you got different privileges, different responsibilities. You're two different people. There will never be fairness or equality. So just drop that idea right now." Because it's that idea that there can be fairness or justice in this world that makes these deranged kids, get into these protests and these insane behaviors that they're doing. And this moral panic and this existential panic around climate change and all the social justice stuff, it only exists because their parents lied to them that there's justice. There is no justice. in this world. Justice comes when Jesus returns, then and only then.
We should talk about the big political scandal of the week, which is the sports grants rort. Bridget McKenzie, she's now the agriculture minister, but before the federal election, she was the sports minister, and she was the I don't know what I can't recall off the top of my head what the actual organisation is that distributes these funds, but she was the Minister for Sport, and there was $100 million worth of grants given to grassroots sports groups. And it just so happened, according to an Auditor General report, that these grants favoured marginal electorates that were either held by the LNP or that they thought they could win. And she looks like she's going to lose her job because there was a $35,000 grant given to a shooting club that she was an honorary member of, and she didn't recuse herself from the consideration of that grant. But to me, why do we have this program to begin with? It is basically a picking winners and losers, because you apply for a grant and not everyone who applies for one gets one. Who's the government or the bureaucrats to decide which sporting club is more worthy of taxpayers' money than another club?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is why, even though I speak, in positive terms about China, I would never want to live there permanently, because I don't believe in central planning. I don't want others to make decisions about what should or shouldn't happen. I want the consumer and the individual to make their own choices. And I think all government grants are immoral and sucky, and no bureaucrat should be touching anyone's hard-earned and redistributing it. So, you play with fire, you're going to get burnt. And of course, we know politics is corrupt to the core. So there's no surprise when you find out that there's corruption going on in these ways and nepotism going on. And, you need to be careful if you're going to be in that world. You need to be very, very clean and careful, or you're going to get busted and you're going to get shamed and dishonorably discharged. And
of course, we know that the federal government, they even subsidise the big major codes. They pay for the AFL or NRL sporting stadiums. The stadium rebuilds in Sydney, that they're going to knock down and rebuild Stadium Australia and the Sydney Football Stadium. A lot of the bill is being footed by the New South Wales taxpayers. And even though sport, it's pillar of local communities, and of course all the big sporting codes, they make millions of dollars through sponsorship, ticketing, TV rights, merchandise, you name it, and yet we still dole out money to them.
Yeah, well, we're a very sporting nation, Australia. We've been pretty into it.
Then there doesn't need to be taxpayers' money spent on it.
Well, I certainly agree with you on that, Tim.
Now, I'm sure you're aware of we discussed it last week on the Uncuckables, the tragic suicide of Wilson Gavin, a young conservative from Queensland, after he led a protest against a drag queen story time in a Brisbane public library, where they didn't go disrupt the event, but they were in the library area, and so once it was over, they chanted "drag queens are not for kids," and of course the footage of that went viral online. He was disavowed by the LNP.
Oh, fuck the LNP. They're such a bunch of cucks.
Well, there's a lot of conservative, traditionalist family values advocates who are determined to not let his death be in vain. And so there was a drag story time in the suburb of Werribee in Melbourne's west this week. I'll just bring up this 7 News article. Protesters surround drag queen reading event. I'll see if I can play this video, see if you can hear it. There might be an ad that will play first. But this drag queen is called Antidepressant, which that's an entirely inappropriate drag queen name for children. I don't like. Are you saying because there's a reference to antidepressants?
Tim, you're getting into minutiae here. Drag queens are not for children. Full stop. Doesn't matter what their name is.
Well, I'm just saying that the name makes it worse because kids shouldn't be on antidepressants. I mean, maybe she's saying she's an antidepressant.
It's depravity in the highest. The flavor can change.
Here we go.
It can't get any worse. Oh my Lord. Where are their dads? Where are their dads? Now, there's no sound apparently, Tim. I certainly can't hear it, and no one at home can either, apparently.
Okay, well, I'll end it there. Well, the vision speaks for itself. You got to see what any depressant looks like, and I've said countless times before, how did this idea develop that drag queens who have throughout all of history been adult entertainers, they tell explicit sexual jokes? Whose idea was it that they should start reading to children?
History, Tim, they have not been public. They haven't been in public for all of history. There was a time where if a man walked down the street dressed that way, he would have probably been beaten to a pulp and hanged in public square. And thank God we've moved beyond those primitive, horrible times. But yeah, like, come on, it's not cool. This shouldn't be happening in public libraries in front of children. And as everyone probably heard me say before, because there was no sound, where are the dads? You look at that group of kids who are being taken along to these events, and it's all of these fat single mums, who are raising their kids to be the next generation of social justice warriors who will not have children. So let's be clear, all of these people are facing imminent gene death because they're setting up a society in which these kids will not want to continue the race or the family when they're growing up around this crap and when their dads aren't there to protect them. Dads need to protect their kids from this stuff. Mums won't do it for the most part. Dads need to do it.
And there is a professional drag queen who has come out against drag story time, though I know a lot of our audience think that drag is immoral and degenerate, full stop. So this is from Paul Joseph Watson's Summit News. Actual drag queen slams woke parents for allowing their kids to be around drag queens. Would you want a stripper or porn star to influence your child? So this is drag queen Kitty Demore posted a viral video in which he expressed his amazement at why woke parents are allowing their kids to be around drag queens. So I have absolutely no idea why you would want want that to influence your child. Would you? Yeah, I've already read that one.
Yeah.
Demure went on to say that drag queens perform in clubs for adults and that backstage there's a lot of sex, nudity and drugs, so I don't think this is an avenue you would want your child to explore. To get them involved in drag is extremely irresponsible on your part. You can raise your child to be normal, regular, everyday child without including them in gay sexual things.
That's great.
We don't need you to bring your kids around, so keep them at home or take them to Disneyland or take them to Chuck E. Cheese.
No, do not take them to Disneyland. They'll get dragged into the pedophile ring.
But
Disneyland is... Disney's where the subversion begins, Tim. That's the problem. People are not connecting that Disney is what has been such a contributing factor to this degeneracy.
So you won't be subscribing to Disney Plus. They have content warnings for racial stereotypes, but not for anything else.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, because of the old stuff. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they still ban Dumbo, right? They don't play Dumbo at all because if they've got the Negro Crows with the singing those songs. But no, I won't be subscribing to Disney Plus. I won't even go see the new Star Wars movie. I won't have anything to do with Disney, and I don't have Netflix. And it's if you fill your mind and your home with that kind of degeneracy, then you've got no place complaining about the state of the world. It starts at home and it starts with you.
And now, to some of our audience, Kitty Demure might looks like somebody who we've seen on Dia's channel, Hogatha. There's a strange resemblance to Hogatha to Kitty Demure, but of course,
although Kitty has better makeup.
Yeah, though recently Hogatha came out as Bluebeard. That's who Hogatha said that they were. So I guess it can't be the same person.
Am I supposed to know who Bluebeard is?
You don't know the legend of Bluebeard.
No, I don't think I do. Or maybe I do. But
we'd have to go. We'd have to go into even more overtime here, and. Oh,
Mate, that's the thing about free and independent media is we can do whatever we damn well please.
If you get back on Telegram and get into the chats, you'll know who Bluebeard is.
I can take a hint to drop it for now.
Now, I'll finish off by reminding everyone that it's awards season at the Unshackled. We have our 10 awards to reflect and remember and commemorate the best and worst of 2019. So I'll just go over, I'll do a screen share here, the awards that we've posted. So
what the hell was that up the top?
What?
What degeneracy? You got porn up the top of your website, Tim. You gotta vet your advertisers or something.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I hope that's not a targeted ad on me.
Listen, Google ads are also degeneracy. Reconsider your business model.
So I went through the... So I'll go through it. We're into overtime, so I might as well keep going.
So when the chat stop pumping like they are, we can call it a night.
Yeah, no one's telling us to...
It's an uncuckathon.
So we went through the Regressive of the Year award. This is Australian one. So we'll have a look at who's winning that.
So who are the contenders briefly? We might as well.
We went through the list last week. I don't want to go through it again.
Right,
yeah,
sure. Well,
Tom Tanuki is still way out ahead on 50% of the vote. He certainly knows who Bluebeard is. You should inquire about that. I think. I don't know. I heard that if he wins, that Bluebeard might want to present the award.
Yeah, it's all Chinese to me until I know who Bluebeard is.
Don't worry, everyone in the chat will know what I'm talking about.
Good. I've been on holiday.
Jokpal Freeman, he's the convicted Australian stabbing murderer who's currently... Well, he's been granted parole from a Bulgaria prison, but he hasn't returned to Australia yet because...
he's a parolee. You can't return when you're on parole. You got to stay in the country.
No, but they're appealing, the Bulgarian government appealing his parole because, well, he stabbed 2 local youths in Bulgaria in 2008, killing one of them he decided to involve himself in an altercation they were having with a local gypsy, and he had a butterfly knife on him and decided that, he would stab 2 of them.
Yep, that seems, perfectly reasonable.
We've got Waleed Ali coming in 3rd, and we've got
poor effort, Waleed. Poor effort.
Daniel Andrews. He's not far behind either, and the rest of the votes are negligible.
Yeah.
Of course, one of the big ones is Patriot of the Year. Just bear with me for a moment. I announced that last year. It's one of the most hotly contested ones, the Patriot of the Year award.
Oh, there's got to be a lot of people in our scene who want that award, Tim.
Mm. So I went through the nominees last week, so I'll just give a voting update.
Now, are we talking Australian Patriot of the Year or just general Patriot?
Australian Patriot Activist of the Year.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So Blair Cottrell is winning at the moment with 29%.
Now let's talk about Blair for a second because I'm not really on Gab. I'm on there. I don't really use it, and I know he used that a lot. Where is Blair doing his activism these days, and to what degree? Because I haven't seen much.
He's been busy with his appeal this year.
Yeah.
The Bendigo mock beheading stunt.
Yeah, well, I mean, even that, you could make a good case that just seeing that appeal through and going through that very tedious and slow legal process is a form of activism because many people would have just given up by now and copped the charge that's laid upon them, but they're still fighting that. So that's a noble thing indeed.
Scott Morland is coming in second. He's a Queensland-based patriot. He helps run Reclaim Australia up there, and he was recently a candidate for Fraser Anning's Conservative National Party in the federal election. Before that, he was a Rise Up Australia party candidate. He's a war veteran, family man, and small businessman. As well, so he certainly has a big presence, which is reflected in his vote. The Bendigo faithful, they were originally the local residents who invited the United Patriots Front in 2015 to join their campaign against the application to have a mosque constructed in the city, which only broke ground this year. They hold a rally every Thursday at midday. They call it Patriots Corner, where they hold up free speech, pro-Australia signs, and a lot of people drive past and toot their horns, so they're coming in third. Neil Erickson, of course, the biggest known serial pest of the Patriot movement. He's coming in fourth.
Come on, Neil. You got to up your game. You got to patriot harder.
And John Bolton, who was Blair Cottrell's lawyer during his appeal at the county court, he's coming in fifth with 30 votes. So that's the update from there. Now we'll go into the other categories which have just been released. The Unshackler of the Year. This is an international award. Basically, who on the global stage has done the greatest to basically, it's more to just shake things up around the world. So we've got, of course, Fraser Anning. He was more the first time.
Thanks for scrolling down, Tim. your ad.
Oh, we lost James there for a moment. I'll just keep going through the nominees. Yep, so Fraser Anning, of course, during the first half of the year, he certainly triggered not just the Australian political class, but internationally as well. Donald Trump, well, he's the House of Representatives and the United States Congress impeached him, which of course is controlled by the Democrats. The trial in the Senate is now taking place, so they're determined to a lot of his political enemies remove him from office. Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, he's a traditionalist. He's wanting to make sure that the Hungarian people repopulate and reproduce, promoting traditional family and Western European values. Pauline Hanson, of course, the leader of One Nation, she survived a Al Jazeera stitch-up hit piece to get her Senator Malcolm Roberts re-elected. Matteo Silvani, he used to be the Italian Deputy Prime Minister until all the other parties ganged up on him and excluded his political party from the government. And then, of course, we've got Russian President Vladimir Putin, who still manages to trigger all of the lefties in the United States thinking that his Russian bot farm is going to destroy democracy in the West. Jair Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil, again, another traditionalist world leader, and he's defunded all the Marxist gender study stuff in Brazil, and he's also when the Amazon bushfires happened, he told the other globalist leaders to get stuffed. You're not going to use these bushfires to basically cede our sovereignty. Rodrigo Duterte, the president of the Philippines, obviously he is known as the Donald Trump of Asia. Well known that he doesn't like drugs in that country. Sebastian Kurz, the Prime Minister of Austria, he was sacked as Prime Minister, but he got back in with a coalition where he had to compromise significantly, including with the Greens, and of course Nigel Farage, leader of the Brexit Party, and now Brexit is going to come into... Britain is going to leave the European Union on January 31st. The legislation has now passed the House of Commons after the 2019 general election. All right. I can do this without James because, well, can't see his face. Here, the Cuck of the Year award. Of course, only a man can be a cuckold. Justin Trudeau, who's won this award every year that we've had it. Canadian Prime Minister, got re-elected even though he wore blackface. Richard Di Natale, leader of the Greens, and of course leading the Change the Date campaign. Bill Shorten, who lost the unlosable election in May. Emmanuel Macron, the globalist president of France, who the Yellow Vest protesters are raging against. Of course, Egg Boy Will Conley for assaulting an elderly man who was a senator. Sacha Baron Cohen, who has made a life out of defaming people. He accepted an award from the Anti-Defamation League, claiming that Facebook, Adolf Hitler and Joseph Goebbels would have loved it. Charlie Kirk, of course, the founder and president of Turning Point USA, who has basically cucked when it comes to immigration, dual loyalty, and degeneracy. Prince Harry, of course, well, he's going to be no longer a prince. He'll be Harry Mountbatten Windsor. Meghan Markle has fully cucked him. He is now leaving the royal family. David Koch, host of Sunrise, who, after the Christchurch massacre, aggressively pointed his finger at Pauline Hanson, saying it was her policies and rhetoric that caused the Christchurch killer. And then, of course, Beta O'Rourke, who was a Democrat presidential candidate from El Paso, Texas, called Donald Trump a white supremacist, and he lives in a majority Hispanic city. He's a white minority in his city, and he speaks Spanish. He's actually Irish background. He wants to confiscate people's guns and, of course, remove tax exemption from religions that don't support LGBT. So truly deserving awards here. Or nominees for that award, I should say. The Cis White Male Award. This is, of course, well, it could also be called the Chad Award. David Leinham, who we've talked about tonight. Nick Fuentes, who we've also talked about. Malcolm Roberts got back into the Senate and is fighting against the globalist climate change agenda. Mark Collett, veteran British nationalist activist and founder of Patriotic Alternative and host of Patriotic Review Weekly. Former Prime Minister Tony Abbott and volunteer firefighter as well. He's been busy fighting them since September. Boris Johnson, the newly elected Prime Minister of Great Britain. PewDiePie, the most popular YouTuber in the history of the platform. Ricky Gervais, who lit Hollywood on fire with his Golden Globes opening monologue. E. Michael Jones, who he's 71 years old, but he's only getting recognition now. He is the founder and editor of Culture War magazine and is probably the intellectual inspiration for the Groper movement. And of course, Martin Sellner, who founded Generation Identity in Austria and is married to Brittany Pettibone, who is, of course, is another nationalist activist. Then we've got the Triggered Feminist Award. So, of course, Sarah Hanson-Young, Say No More, Clementine Ford, Say No More, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the leader of the Green New Deal over in the United States, Van Badham. She is basically the same type of misandrist as Clementine Ford, but just not as famous. Yumi Steins, who called Kerry-Ann Kenley a racist for talking about domestic violence and abuse in remote Indigenous communities. Greta Thunberg, basically, well, she is the personification of Triggered. Tracy Spicer, who she produced the Me Too documentary Silent No More. Of course, the irony was that anyone who criticized her or a documentary, she threatened to sue and tried to silence them, which, of course, is the irony of that of the documentary title. Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Sherelle Moody, she is the anti-domestic violence campaigner who claimed that firefighters will go home to beat their partners. And of course, Marsha Langton, who is an Indigenous academic from Melbourne University. She gets up to some incredible Twitter abuse, which it's amazing that she was selected for Indigenous Minister Ken Wyatt's review into the reconciliation or constitutional recognition referendum review, even if you just look at a Twitter feed. So those are the Triggered Feminists. Then we've got the Culture Warrior of the Year Award, Daisy Cousins, YouTuber and, of course, Sky News personality, Bernard Gaynor. He's a ADF veteran and family values campaigner. Bettina Arndt, men's rights activist. Margaret Court, Australian tennis legend and now Christian pastor. Bill Muhlenberg, who runs the Culture Watch blog. Of Israel Folau, who, of course, had his Rugby Australia contract torn up for his Sinners Instagram post. At the end of the year, he reached a settlement with Rugby Australia for a payout on his contract. Tanya Davies, who helped amend the New South Wales abortion law reform bill because it was going to legalise abortion up until birth. She got some pretty good concessions in it to protect the unborn. She's a Liberal backbencher. She nearly strapped on the suicide vest with the political suicide vest with launching a spill against Gladys Berejiklian. It was a political risky, but she managed to. The means justified the ends. Well, for all of us, and including the unborn. So that's why she's nominated. Mark Latham, New South Wales MLC for One Nation. He's leading the religious freedom debate there. Jacinda Price, who we talked about before, Indigenous conservative activist. She was a Liberal candidate at the federal election for the seat of Lingari, and she's just taken up a position at the Centre for Independent Studies in Sydney in their Indigenous policy unit. And Kiralee Smith, most of you will remember her as the face of Allowed Choices. She is now the director of Binary Australia, which, as the name suggests, is basically trying to remind the public that there are just two genders. Then, of course, we've got the Degenerate of the Year award. And, well, there's been plenty of degenerate. Jessica Yaniv, the Wax My Balls trans woman who has just been arrested for assaulting Rebel News' Keen Baxter outside a court appearance. They're already on weapons charges for bringing out a taser during a live stream with Blair White. Prince Andrew, of course, for his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted pedophile billionaire who committed suicide in his maximum security prison. That's why he's nominated there, and so is his Madame Procura, Ghislaine Maxwell. Then, of course, we have YouTuber Onision, who is accused of grooming several of his teenage girl fans, who Chris Hansen, the To Catch a Predator guy, is now after him, and he's freaking out. Harvey Weinstein, well, he's back in the news because his rape trial is taking place, and he's got a fragility walker that he's going into court with to sort of gain some extra sympathy. Ilhan Omar, another member of the Socialist Squad with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's a degenerate because she married her brother and had an affair with her one of her campaign consultants. So she may as well just take the hijab off. I mean, there's nothing modest about her. Katie Hill, former Democratic representative from California, resigned after her bisexual sex orgy images were released, and she had been engaged in sexual liaisons with her staffers as well. Joe Biden, who of course has been accused of unwanted touching women and girls, it's called Sleazy Joe or Creepy Uncle Joe. And then, of course, Kevin Spacey, who 3 of his 4 accusers have mysteriously died this year. And one of his accusers also withdrew their lawsuit against him. So, yes, all very worthy degenerates there. Now, this is the 9th award, the International Media Personality of the Year award. Paul Joseph Watson, who edits Summit.news and, of course, is a YouTuber. Tucker Carlson, host of Tucker Carlson Tonight on Fox News. He helped you would say downgrade the tensions with Iran, because Donald Trump saw his Fox News show instructing Trump not to increase tensions with the country. So Tucker Carlson saved the world. Alex Jones of InfoWars, he's still going strong even though he's deplatformed by everybody. Faith Goldie, probably the most based Canadian journalist there is. She got banned from Facebook this year, but she is still doing regular vlogs and commenting. Michelle Malkin, a veteran conservative journalist of 25 years, she was the biggest name to join the Groyper army and side with them. She got disavowed by the Young America's Foundation. She said she didn't care. She's for America first. She wants to end open borders and stop the degeneracy and dual loyalties. Ann Coulter, she's pretty much got the same views as Michelle Malkin. She, of course, wrote Adios America, which was basically Trump's election manifesto that there needed to be a border wall. Andy Ngo, he helped expose the Rose City Antifa in Portland, how it's basically a sanctuary city for that domestic terror organization. He was assaulted by Antifa at the Patriot prayer rally, had a brain hemorrhage, as he is now the editor of Post Millennial now, and Antifa, they are so mad at him, they even turned up at his house at Halloween. Alan Jones, he survived the Sleeping Giants Oz and Mad Fucking Witches advertiser boycott campaign. He's still number 1 in Sydney. This was over the put a sock down the throat of Jacinta Ardern. Mike Cernovich, he's the one that got the Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell civil lawsuits by the victims, the files unsealed. And then, of course, James O'Keefe of Project Veritas, who has done the exposés on Google, CNN, and most recently Bernie Sanders' Gulag campaign volunteer. We've got one more award to go, which is the Fake News Award of the Year. So I'm not sure if James is going to rejoin us at all. I just got a message from him 12 minutes ago. Looks like I'm supposed to call it a night. Say goodnight to the viewers for me, Tim, and thanks for the chat. My non-mover internet will be active next time. Yeah, I'll call it a night here. We've gone way over time. So thank you for everyone for joining this week. It's been great that you've all joined us again. I'll be back tomorrow night for Wilms Front, 7 p.m. Melbourne time on the Tim Wilms YouTube and D Live channel. Please visit the Uncuckables.com to connect with us on podcast and on other platforms as well. And of course, check out the other Australian alt media publications, the Unshackled.net, xyz.net.au, and of course, rationalrise.tv as well. I will see you all tomorrow night. Thank you so much for watching.